everyone, and welcome back to Baron's Den for the getting on towards some of the last roster change videos now. We've only got a few to go, and now it's time to travel to the sands of Cymru to see the Tomb Kings. The brand new team in the box set. So they're brand new. Obviously, they've been in the game for quite a while in previous editions, but they were still in Team of Legend status in 2020. So they were brought back as one of the two starter teams in the Season 3 box set. So we're going to be comparing them against their PDF as a Team of Legend in 2020. So let's get into it. So we start off with the Tomb King skeleton. And according to what I can see, it looks like they're exactly the same. They've just got Devious on secondary. So movement 5, strength 3, edge 4+, passing 6+, armor 8+. They've got general primary and secondary. They have agility, devious, and strength, with regeneration and thick skull, and of course they cost 40,000. So I've already spoken about it on the undead roster. Zombies got a bit more of a glow up than the skeletons, and I think for a lot of people who had the choice, they tended to favour the zombies. But the skeletons aren't a bad choice. Well, you don't have a choice, let's be honest. But they're not terrible. It's a bit of a shame that they don't get devious on primary, because I think that would have been a use for skeletons. But they have a bit more movement, and they've got the general access, so altogether not horrendous, and certainly no worse than they were before. If anything, I suppose you could argue that they're a little bit worse, because Dirty Player is now locked behind Devious, and it's not on general, so it's worth bearing in mind. But overall, there's not much difference. Then the Tomb King Thrower, he is improved, because he's the same stat line, barring he's got one more pip of armour now, which is important, because it's worth having not just one of these players now, and two of them, because they are reasonably well costed. They've got access to general and passing, and they've got that armor 9+. They're never going to be throwers, in my opinion, because there's no one to throw to on this team. But they you could stick block on one of these, and they make a pretty effective blitzer. So I definitely think you'll want to take two throwers, whereas in the past you may have only taken one because they were a little bit weaker, or as weak as linemen. Now they are tougher, which is great. So they cost less, they've got more armour, they've got that devious secondary access, but otherwise they are pretty much the same. Okay, the Tomb King Blitzer, again, a little bit cheaper. It's lost its passing access and gained devious instead, and it's now passing on a 5+. So really, it is better because it's cheaper. The passing 5+ is a nominal change. It's not really going to, it's not really going to make this Blitzer start passing a lot more than it used to. But it's still a decent player, the Tomb King Blitzer, and it's just good that it hasn't got any worse in this edition. So far, it's either slight improvements or they've stayed the same. And having general and strength means this player can dip into things like guard, mighty blow, stand firm. Remembering, of course, that guard and mighty blow are going to have the skill tax attached to it. Okay, on to the Tomb Guardian. So this is the player that most people play Tomb Kings for, because you get a strength 5 big guy, and you get 4 of them with no nega trait. So if you love undead mummies, you're going to really love Tomb Guardians. So they are movement 4, strength 5, edge 5+, passing 6+, armor 10+. They now cost 115, which is a price increase. What is that an increase of? That is an increase of 15k, so it's a considerable price increase. They've got the strength on primary, agility in general on secondary, and their skills are now decay, regeneration, and brawler. And so that 15k is essentially you're spending on brawler, which isn't a bad deal, because if you got a chosen primary, it would cost 20. In the old edition of the game, if you'd have randomed brawler, it would have been an extra 10k cost. So it's kind of in between those. Now you can't random anymore, so there would be no way in this game to get an old Tomb Guardian to decay regeneration brawler for 115. It would be 120. So overall, the cost for getting brawler isn't too bad. And whilst brawler isn't a well-loved skill, I don't think, I actually think it's better than people give it credit for. As someone who's played a bit of Black Orcs, I've occasionally wrongly put it on big guys at tournaments. I say wrongly. I have found it useful from time to time. And it's nowhere near as good as block. But if you gave the Tomb Guardians block, you'd have to really cost them high, because they'd be amazing. So having brawler, it just means that you might not necessarily have to dip into block, particularly with it being elite tax now on that skill. You might just think, I'm going to build it. I'm going to give it mighty blow. I'm going to give it guard. It's already an extra pot of money for the tax. Do I really need to give it guard block as well? It's already got brawler, so it can already save me a little bit from the both downs potentially. It's not any good on defense, but let's be honest, how many people are going to be taking down Tomb Guardians? Well, they will, and you'll get people to die upping them because they don't have block. But even so, I think that brawler just gives them a better starting platform to go from. So I think that's a positive change. I do think the Tomb Guardians are better now. Their rules, they are now 60k reroll, so that's improved, saving a bit of money on rerolls. They've got Sylvanian Spotlight and Masters of Undeath now, so this is an improvement for them as well. So if they kill an opposition player, it means they can raise a skeleton, which makes absolutely no sense, really, does it? Because if you kill a orc lineman, why would you then raise a skeleton? It's had no years to decay, and it's in Tomb King regalia. I suppose you could argue that that player goes into the back and puts on Tomb King team clothes. But why would it be a skeleton? The zombie, in a way, the zombie makes sense, even when it's not the same race. This one's a bit weird, but it's a good rule change for the Tomb Kings themselves, because it'll help to keep their reserves going a little bit, particularly if they've taken hits. Skeletons aren't the most hardy of players, so they are going to get removed. So if you get the chance to bump up your reserves, I think that's going to be useful. So it is nice. And I've had it in tournaments, because I take Necro a lot to tournaments. I've had it where I've brought in a zombie during the game I'm playing. Obviously, because it's Resurrection, I don't keep that zombie for future games. But in a match, particularly if I've lost a few, if I manage to kill somebody, it's nice then I've increased the size of my bench as well. So nice little buff, I think, for the Tomb Kings. Okay, so on to the pros and cons. So, brawling Tomb Kings versus more expensive Tomb Kings. I talked Tomb Guardians, sorry. That should say Tomb Guardians, really, shouldn't it? So the fact that they've got brawler and is kind of offset by the fact they're more expensive. But I think overall, I think it's a positive change. So I think the pro outweighs the con there. Secure the Ball is going to be massive for this team, because they are probably the most famous team, along with potentially Chaos Dwarfs, for struggling to pick up the ball, because they're all Ag 4+. And that just means that you could have games where, even with sure hands, if you just kept rolling a 3 and then a 2, and then your next turn you roll a 1 and a 3, and you're just struggling to pick up the ball, and especially if you're playing a team like Skaven or Underworld or another devious, agile team that's going to come in, take the ball, and score on your defense and your offense, and they get a defensive touchdown, and it's purely because you couldn't get that ball. It's very frustrating. So I think it's a great skill, and I love its design, because it means it can be used when you've got plenty of time in your backfield when there's no one around. But if you lose the ball in the scrum in the middle of the pitch, let's say your opponent successfully sacks you, no one's going to be able to secure the ball then. You're going to have to rely on other skills and picking up the ball to get that ball. I just think it makes sense, and it's a good way to explain why players... I mean, it was just daft, wasn't it? Picking up the ball shouldn't be hard. I mean, loads of players have said it for years. From a law point of view, why are these players struggling to pick up a ball off the floor? That's going to happen 1 in 100 times where you fumble the ball. It's like you take American football, even you take football in the UK, soccer. How often do players walk up to the ball and slip over on it? Do you know what I mean? Professional players, it does happen, but hardly ever. So that new T+ rule, I think, reflects that well. I think it's great. Only devious secondary access being another con. That is a con, because I just think they can't lean into that dirty player as much as they might have done before. And there's a few other devious skills that they might have benefited from. The tougher thrower, I think, is really good, because I think it'll help him stay around as a thrower, but also it means he can be a bit more of a utility player now. The Blitzer's lost passing access. I don't think that's a massive con at all. Don't think really there was much need for it, because you've got passing access on the thrower. So if you want a leader caddy, or if you want some of those passing skills, for example, Nerves of Steel's no good really on a blitzer because they're still Edge 4+ anyway. They've got some better passing now, so the Tomb Guardian's thrown on a 6, the blitzer's thrown on a 5. Again, that's a very minor pro, but stat-wise it is actually better than last time, so I thought I'd mention it. Elite skills could be costly on the Tomb Guardians. I mentioned that when I was talking about them. So often they'd want Block, Guard, Mighty Blow. Well, all 3 of those are now elite skills, so that's going to cost you. Cheaper blitzers and throwers helps to offset the more expensive Tomb Guardians. The fact that they've got some devious access means at least it might be a bit more expensive, but they could perhaps turn one skeleton into a Fowler and save it for those secondaries. And finally, Masters of the Undeath now raises skeletons for Tomb Kings, which I think is definitely a pro. So all in all, I think you've got to say that the Tomb Kings are in a better place now than they were. And the place they were in before was an interesting one, because I always thought they were, the lower end of a tier 2 bracket. If you were doing 5 tiers, maybe a tier, bottom of tier 3, top of tier 4 kind of team. But then they'd win tournaments. So I think perhaps that was more my lack of using them and seeing them at tournaments myself coming into play there, because I think they were a pretty decent team in the last edition of the game, and I do believe they've got better. So they join this ever-growing list of teams that I think have had a slight buff. I've put them pretty much in the middle because I think they've probably had a little bit more than these teams, but not as much as these teams. And we're getting towards the end now, so at the end I'm going to rejuggle this a little bit more, because I keep mentioning the Amazons need to move over here, because I hadn't seen break tackle when I left them there, and they were already almost edging into this anyway. A few other things I might change as well. So yeah, next will be, well, there's only Chaos Dwarves and Vampires left, so I will be going Chaos Dwarves next, then Vampires, and then I will do a roundup video where I might include the Bretonnians, because I said I wouldn't do the Bretonnians because they haven't improved from anything, but it would be nice to have a look at them, so I might have a look at them in the video and then do the roundup. Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It'd be great to have you on board. After I finish these roster videos, I'm going to have a little break while I wait for my actual rule book to get to me, and then I can have some time to look at the rules, and then I might do skill breakdowns or team focus videos where we look at, player progression, roster builds as such. So if you want to hang around for that, please subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you very much. Bye for now.